The invasion begins. The Zorthan Galactic Empire had conquered over 1,000 worlds. No species had ever stopped them. Their warships were massive, their technology was superior, and their army was unmatched. When the High Council set its eyes on Earth, no one questioned the decision. It was just another primitive planet, or so they thought. Fleet Admiral Tyros stood tall on the bridge of his flagship, the Zorthan Wrath. He looked at the blue and green planet on the screen before him. "What a peaceful-looking world," he muttered. "It will burn soon enough." His officers chuckled. Earth had no fleet in deep space, no defense stations, no planetary shields. Their technology was centuries behind the Empire's. It would be an easy victory. A message suddenly appeared on the main screen. It was not from any human government. It had no official seal. It was just a simple transmission sent across the galaxy. "Turn back. This is your only warning." The bridge fell silent for a moment. Then the officers laughed. Tyros smirked. "They think they can scare us with words. Humans truly are fools." He turned to his second-in-command, Commander Rethor. "Begin the invasion. No more delays." Rethor saluted. "Yes, Admiral." The invasion force moved in. Thousands of warships descended into Earth's orbit. The attack was about to begin. The mighty Zorthan fleet was ready to unleash its power. Then something strange happened. The first battleship that crossed a certain point in orbit vanished. 1 second, it was there. The next, it was gone. No explosion, no distress signal, just emptiness where the ship had been. Admiral Tyros frowned. What just happened? The officers checked the sensors, but they showed nothing. The ship had simply disappeared. A second warship moved forward, and it too vanished. Now, the laughter was gone. The bridge was silent. The officers looked at each other, their faces pale. "Some kind of cloaked weapon?" Rethor asked. Tyros clenched his fists. "No, if humans had such technology, they would have used it before." A third warship entered the zone. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Then, every light on the ship went out. Its engines shut down, its weapons failed, and its crew stopped responding. Tyros watched as the ship floated helplessly, completely dead. "Admiral," one of the officers shouted, "our ships are not responding. They're shutting down on their own." A chill ran down Tyros' spine. This was not normal warfare. This was something else. Then the second transmission came. The same voice. Calm. Cold. Human. "We warned you. You did not listen." Tyros' heart pounded. He had faced hundreds of battles. But this was different. His fleet, his unstoppable Zorthan war machine, was falling apart, and the humans hadn't even fired a shot. "Admiral," an officer cried, "we need to retreat." Tyros' pride screamed at him to fight, but his instincts, the ones that had kept him alive for decades, whispered a terrifying truth. We were wrong about Earth. And now, it was too late. The trap is set. Admiral Tyros gritted his teeth as the chaos unfolded before him. 3 warships lost, and the humans hadn't even fired a single shot. "This isn't possible," he muttered under his breath. The Zorthan Empire was invincible. But here, in Earth's orbit, they were blind, helpless, and breaking apart. The crew scrambled across the bridge, trying to make sense of the situation. Scanners showed nothing. Sensors were useless. Communications were failing. "Admiral," shouted Commander Rethor, his voice filled with panic. "Something is jamming our systems. We can't even lock onto their cities." Tyros clenched his fists. "Send the second wave. Full force. I want this planet burning in the next hour." "Ah, yes, Admiral." The remaining warships surged forward, engines roaring as they descended toward Earth. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons ready to rain destruction on the human world. Then it happened again. One by one, their ships began shutting down. Not exploding, not getting shot, just turning off. Massive battlecruisers lost power mid-flight, falling from the sky like dead metal husks. Fighter squadrons flickered out of existence, as if something erased them from reality. Cyrus watched in horror as his mighty fleet, the pride of the Zorthan Empire, became nothing more than floating debris. "Repeat void," he barked. An officer stammered, his face pale. I don't know. The systems just stopped working. No virus, no attack, just nothing. That was when the whispers began. At first, Cyrus thought it was his imagination, but then he saw his crew's faces drain of color. "Do you hear that?" Rethar's voice trembled. It was faint, but growing louder. A voice. No voices. Hundreds, thousands, human voices. They spoke in whispers, some laughing, some crying, some simply chanting words in a language the Zorthans did not understand. And then, one voice cut through them all. A single human transmission. "You should have listened." The bridge plunged into darkness. Every screen flickered, showing static. Then, images. Cyrus's eyes widened. It was his fleet. Burning. Destroyed. But this hadn't happened yet. The images flashed faster. Zorthan soldiers screaming, running, being hunted by something unseen. Ships cracking apart like dry bones. Entire fleets torn from reality, as if the universe itself rejected them. And then the final image. A planet, shattered into a billion pieces. A warning. A promise. Cyrus staggered back, his breath caught in his throat. He knew what this was. A mind attack. Not through weapons, not through force, but through something deeper, something terrifying. The humans weren't fighting with ships. They were fighting with fear, and they were winning. "Admiral," Rethar whispered, his voice barely holding together, "we need to retreat." Cyrus's pride screamed no, but his instincts, the ones that had kept him alive for decades, told him the truth. They had walked into a trap, and Earth was its predator, the unseen weapon. Admiral Cyrus struggled to breathe. His own fleet, the greatest war machine in the galaxy, was crumbling around him, and the humans had not even revealed themselves. The whispers continued, not just through the communication channels, but inside his mind, inside every Zorthan's mind. One of his officers, a seasoned veteran, suddenly screamed and collapsed, clutching his head. They're inside my head," he shrieked. His eyes rolled back, and a moment later he stopped moving. Dead. But there was no wound, no attack, just fear. Cyrus's heart pounded like a war drum. What is this?" he whispered. Then the human voice returned, cold and emotionless. "Your mind is weak. Your empire is a lie. You do not belong here." Cyrus turned to his officers. "Shut it down. Shut it all down." "Admiral, we can't. It's not coming from our systems. It's coming from space itself." Cyrus refused to believe it. There is no such thing as magic. The humans, they must have a device, a weapon. Then where is it? Commander Rethar shouted. His hands were shaking. A Zorthan warrior, shaking. Cyrus had no answer. Across the bridge, the remaining officers were breaking down. Some muttered nonsense to themselves. Others stared at the black void of space, as if something was staring back. And then the Zorthan flagship, the Wrath itself, began to fail. The lights flickered. The engines died. The gravity failed for a moment before stabilizing again. The great beast of war was dying, and no one could explain why. "Admiral," a terrified voice crackled through the comms. We can't move." The fleet had been frozen. Not by an energy field, not by weapons, but by something far worse. They had lost control. Hundreds of Zorthan warships, the most powerful in the Empire, sat in space like lifeless corpses. Not a single human vessel was visible. Not a single missile had been fired. Yet the Zorthan invasion fleet was falling apart. A deep silence fell across the bridge. Then, something even worse happened. One of the lifeless Zorthan warships moved, not under its own power. Something pulled it. Slowly, it turned toward the planet. Then another moved, and another. One by one, the dead ships turned, as if invisible hands were grabbing them, dragging them toward Earth's surface. "Admiral," an officer gasped, pointing at the main screen. The flagship's scanners showed something impossible. A pulling force, not gravity, not magnetism. Something deeper, something unnatural, was taking hold of the Zorthan fleet. One of the officers lost control and vomited on the bridge floor. Another started sobbing. They weren't just losing ships. They were being erased. This was not war. This was a warning. And it was only just beginning. Humanity's true strength. Admiral Tyros stood frozen. His Zorthan war machine, once a symbol of absolute dominance, was now nothing more than drifting metal. Ships disappeared one by one, pulled by an invisible force toward Earth's surface. No explosions, no debris, just gone. It wasn't just destruction. It was erasure. The whispers grew louder in his mind. No longer chaotic, they were speaking to him directly. You were warned. Zyros forced himself to focus. His fleet was in freefall, and he needed to strike back. "Commander Rethar, prepare the ground forces." Rethar's hands trembled, but he nodded. "Ah, yes, Admiral. If space belonged to the humans, then the ground would belong to the Zorthans." Within minutes, thousands of drop pods and landing crafts launched from the remaining functional ships, heading toward Earth's surface. Elite Zorthan shock troopers, each one trained to fight in the deadliest environments, prepared to unleash hell on this primitive planet. They landed in multiple locations across Earth. Their mission was simple: break human resistance. Then they saw them. The humans. Not soldiers, not armies. Just people, standing in the streets, watching. No fear, no panic, just waiting. Zyros watched the live feeds from orbit, confusion twisting his mind. Why aren't they running? Why aren't they hiding? Then the first Zorthan soldier opened fire. A plasma bolt shot forward and stopped in midair. Frozen, as if time itself refused to let it move. A human girl stepped forward and touched the plasma bolt with her finger. It vanished into nothing. The Zorthan trooper stumbled back, his weapon shaking in his hands. What is this? And then the humans changed. One by one, their eyes began to glow. Some with blue light, others with gold, some even with pure darkness swirling within. They moved without motion, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Some floated above the ground, while others walked through walls like mist. This wasn't a primitive species. This was something else entirely, something the galaxy was never meant to face. The Zorthan soldiers panicked, opening fire wildly, but their weapons did nothing. The plasma bolts were either stopped midair or worse, turned back against them. A single human, a young man, walked toward a group of Zorthan troopers. They fired. He caught their energy blasts in his hand and crushed them like fragile glass. The ground beneath him shattered, and with a simple motion of his hand, the entire squad was lifted into the air, unable to breathe. Then, without a sound, they vanished. Not dead, just gone. Zyros' breath caught in his throat as he watched. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Admiral." Rethar's voice was barely a whisper. "The humans, they are not using technology." Zyros finally understood. This wasn't war. It was correction. The humans had given them a warning. Now, they were showing them why. The final stand. Admiral Zyros could not move. His fingers clutched the edge of the command console as he watched the impossible unfold. The The Zorthan invasion force, the pride of the Empire, was crumbling without a single human shot being fired. On the planet's surface, the Zorthan soldiers were vanishing. Not killed, not captured, just erased, like they had never existed. The humans were not fighting. They were unmaking. Xairos turned toward his officers, but there was no hope in their faces anymore. Some had collapsed, their minds broken by the things they had seen. Others simply stared into the void, whispering in fear. Only Commander Rethar remained functional, but even he shook uncontrollably. "Admiral," he whispered, barely able to form words. "This isn't war. This is judgment." Xairos refused to believe it. He was a Zorthan warrior. The Empire had crushed civilizations, wiped out species that dared resist. And yet here, before Earth, they were nothing. Xairos roared, slamming his fist into the console. "Fire EV or a thing." His command was desperate. It was all he had left. If their fleet was going to die, they would take Earth with them. The remaining Zorthan warships powered up their weapons, hundreds of plasma cannons, orbital missiles, and planetary destroyers locked onto Earth's surface. The bridge crew held their breath, watching as the countdown began. 5 seconds. Xairos' heart pounded. 4 seconds. Earth's people still stood still, watching, waiting. 3 seconds. A single human child on the planet raised her hand toward the sky. 2 seconds. A whisper, soft but filled with power, echoed through every Zorthan mind. No. 1 second. The fleet fired. The entire Zorthan armada unleashed their full strength. Energy beams, warheads, and gravitational warping missiles rushed toward Earth, enough firepower to shatter the planet into dust. Admiral Xairos allowed himself a single moment of relief. At least we will leave a scar. Then, the impossible happened. The attacks never landed. The instant they touched Earth's atmosphere, they froze in place. Xairos watched in horror as his fleet's deadliest weapons simply hung in midair, suspended like raindrops frozen in time. Then, they reversed. Everything the Zorthans fired turned back, accelerating 10 times faster than before. The warheads, the plasma bolts, the destruction, all of it was sent back toward the fleet. "Brace for impact," Rethar screamed. The retaliation was instant. The fleet exploded. Ships cracked like glass, breaking apart in the void. Fire consumed the darkness, and entire warships were torn into nothing. Hundreds of thousands of Zorthan lives vanished in an instant. The flagship shook violently. Xairos was thrown to the floor, the force crushing the air from his lungs. The bridge was in flames, alarms blaring. Screams filled the air, his crew dying around him. Xairos clawed his way up, staring at the destruction. His great fleet, the mighty Zorthan Empire's unstoppable force, was reduced to embers and drifting corpses, and Earth had still not fired a single weapon. The human child on the surface lowered her hand. The battle was over, and the Zorthan Empire had lost. Earth's final message. The Zorthan flagship drifted in silence, half destroyed, half dead. Inside the ruined bridge, Admiral Xairos coughed up blood. He forced himself to stand, his body broken, his mind barely holding together. The once proud Zorthan fleet was gone. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries now floated as lifeless wrecks. Bodies of elite warriors drifted in the void, swallowed by the very darkness they had sought to conquer. Xairos' hands trembled as he looked at the screen. Earth remained untouched. Not a single city destroyed, not a single structure damaged, not even a single human casualty. It was not a battle. It was a lesson. A soft sound crackled through the broken communication system. A voice. Calm, cold, human. "Do you understand now?" Xairos gritted his teeth. His voice came out hoarse, weak. "What? What are you?" A long silence followed. Then the voice replied. "We were like you once. We believed war was strength. We conquered, destroyed, until we learned. Cyros's breath hitched. Learned what? The voice did not change. That war is nothing compared to power. Cyros's heart pounded. You mean your technology? Your weapons? A soft, almost amused chuckle echoed through the bridge. You still don't understand. This was never a war. You lost before you even arrived. Cyros felt something cold crawl up his spine. This wasn't just superior technology. It was something else, something the galaxy was never meant to face. Then the voice spoke again. We will allow you to leave, Admiral. Cyros's eyes widened. You're letting us go. Yes, but only once. This is your final warning. The remaining Zorthan survivors, scattered across damaged ships, began to disappear from scanners. Cyros panicked. Wait, what are you doing to them? The voice remained calm. We are sending them home. They will wake in their own beds, in their own cities. They will not remember this battle, only that the Empire must never return here. Cyros froze. His mind raced. This wasn't just war. This wasn't just an enemy. This was something greater, something beyond the Zorthan Empire's understanding. He clenched his fists. And me? What about me? A pause. Then the voice answered. You will remember everything. Cyros's blood turned to ice. He would remember. The fear, the destruction, the fact that the mighty Zorthan Empire had met something it could never conquer. And the weight of that knowledge would crush him forever. The final transmission ended. The ruined flagship's systems flickered, then roared back to life. A force dragged the ship away from Earth, pushing it into deep space. The planet shrank from view, untouched, unchanged, as if the battle had never happened. But Cyros knew the truth. It had happened, and it was a warning that the galaxy would never forget. The legend of Earth. Admiral Cyros sat alone in his personal chamber aboard the last surviving Zorthan flagship, staring at the darkness of space. His hands trembled. His breath was shallow. He had survived countless wars, wiped out entire civilizations, never felt fear. But now, he was afraid. Not just for himself. For the entire Zorthan Empire. The humans had spared them, but Cyros knew the truth. Earth was untouchable. Not because of their weapons, not because of their technology. Because they were beyond anything the galaxy understood. The Zorthan High Command demanded a full report. They wanted to know why the great fleet had vanished, why the greatest admiral in the Empire had returned with nothing. Cyros stood before them. His voice was hollow, his eyes sunken. He spoke one sentence. The humans are not to be disturbed. The council laughed. The Emperor himself, a being of iron will, scoffed. You mean to tell us that a single planet defeated our mightiest fleet without a fight? Cyros did not respond. He simply stepped forward, placed his admiral's badge on the table, and walked away. He had seen what humans were capable of. He had seen ships disappear without reason. He had seen his strongest warriors erased from existence. And he had heard the whispers, the ones that never left his mind. Even now, when he closed his eyes, he could still hear them. You should have listened. The Zorthan Empire covered thousands of worlds. It had faced rebellions, monsters, and wars beyond imagination. But never, never had they faced something like Earth. And they never would again. Because the name of that planet, once insignificant, was now spoken in fear and reverence across the stars. A whispered legend. A place that no fleet, no empire, no species would ever dare challenge again. The only world that had sent a single message and made the galaxy obey. Final transmission from the Zorthan Empire's archives. Do not go to Earth. Do not speak of Earth. If you value your exist, leave them alone. This is your only law.